Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for yet another Customer Insights webinar. And today we have a very special guest with us, Joonas, as you can see. But before I change the presentation to him, I wanted to give you a small introduction for today's webinar. So I will be your host today. My name is Maya. And Peter might join us also at the end of the webinar to answer some of your specific questions. But if any questions were not answered due to time issues, then don't worry. Please, if you have a question at any time, send it in the chat and we will answer it. If not during the webinar, then straight to your email, so don't worry. So today we have a very busy agenda. We will explore not only two, but a third case study. I know that you've received an invitation informing you about 2 case studies, but Joonas had a nice surprise for us. So if we have time, we will go through a third case study. Yes, so me and Joonas have some questions for you that we would like to get to know you a bit better. So that we can provide you some customized experience. We would like to get to ask you about your experience using Solibri, so we would know our audience better. Okay, I see that a lot of people have experience in using Solibri. Okay, so more than 60% have voted. I'll wait a bit more. And here are the results. So we have a lot of people using it once or twice a week. And 14% have never used it or have used it very rarely. So it's good to have this variety in our audience and experience. So let's get to the other question, which is more specific about Autorun. So we would like to get to know, we know now that some of you use Solibri, but how often have you used Autorun? Okay, I see a lot of answers about never have used it. Okay, that's great. That's why we're here. So, okay, here are your answers. 72% have never used it and 17% have used it rarely. So that's where we need you, Joonas. Please. Okay. Yes, great. Okay, so I won't take more of your time. Let's get to the subject of today. I will give you the sharing, Joonas.
Yes. Okay, do you see my screen now?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. There won't be too many slides today, and the presentation part, I think, won't take that much time. I did the same webinar in Finnish, and I think we finished in about 25 minutes, and the rest of the time was questions and answers, and this is a subject that tends to raise a lot of questions. But judging from the poll results, I think I will also in the beginning, before we move on to the actual functionalities, I will just show where you can find the documentation for Solibri Autorun. Before we jump into the subject at hand, let me introduce myself. So my name is Joonas Koistinen. I'm also joining today from Finland, Helsinki area here, same as Maya. And I've recently started my own business company is called Crane Optimizer. As the name suggests, I do a special service for construction and design management for optimizing the crane selection as well as optimizing the prefab design. And I will show you a bit later what it is about. The case 2 example of the Autorun concerns that. And so yeah, recently started my own business, been very busy with that. My background otherwise is very much in construction. I started in estimating about 12 years ago, moved on to be a site engineer in hospital projects for some years. And then before I started my own business, I worked for a housing development company here in Helsinki as a development engineer and a BIM manager later on. And actually there was the first time that I used Solibri Autorun to standardize our BIM content across projects for that company in the role of a BIM manager. And otherwise, as a development engineer, I was deep into cost estimating systems, and also started at the time to learn software development. And what you see today is something I've built myself. Okay, so let's move on to today's agenda. Solibri Autorun, obviously, is the main subject, but it will also be a bit more advanced in the form of Python scripts, because with the Python scripts we can use also other desktop software API. So Solibri Autorun is an extension of Solibri that you can use to automate some of the tasks that you would normally manually do in the Solibri user interface. But instead of doing that, we launched Solibri with a special XML file, and this XML file contains the instructions for Solibri to automate some of the tedious tasks that we would normally do by hand. And the way I've structured this presentation today is that we'll go through the goals, what the problems are for each case, and what is our target. We will not be going into the code because we're not expecting the participants to have any background in computer sciences. So instead of showing the code, I will show a few diagrams, how the process works and how it has been implemented on my device. And after that, we'll have a look at the case results for each of the case. But since we have a lot of people who have never used Autorun, I will show you the documentation first. So in this URL, and I think Maya can later share this for you, in GitHub, you have the developer platform, and make sure you have the latest documentation. And here you can find the information that you need for getting started with the Autorun, how to launch it, and with some basic examples. And you can also get a template from me after this webinar. You just have to drop me an email and I will send one for you. And I think from documentation, what I can show you what's interesting for us is that what are the different tasks that we can automate with Solibri Autorun. So here's the current list. Obviously, you can open models, update models, save them. You can also open classifications, open rule sets, and run checks. So instead of having to open and update the models manually and running the rule sets, you can just have the computer do that for you. You can create presentations, different reports, BCF report as well. And this is something that for me is perhaps the most important feature, is opening and running information takeoffs and reporting them, because this way we also get data out of Solibri. into Excel format. And if we get it to Excel format, we can use it for many different purposes. And of course, you can save and close the model as well. And for each of these use cases, you have the detailed instructions and examples. So the XML file that contains the instructions for Solibri Autorun looks something like this. So this is the syntax that we use. And each of these has an example of the syntax. And as well as the optional parameters means that, for example, for this open model, we can define the category as well as the discipline when we are using this automation. Let's go back to the presentation. And in addition to the Solibri Autorun, I will be showing a little bit of a different software as well called SimpleBim. Now, SimpleBim is for modifying and enriching and validating IFC models. It has a similar command line API as Solibri, so we can combine those two by using a Python script. And the Python script doesn't directly interact with either one of the software, but it interacts with our operating system. So it gives us commands to run Solibri with a specific file or run SimpleBim in a specific file. Let's move on to the goals. Case one is a project where I was doing consulting for 4D phasing and scheduling work. Main contractor is SRV, is one of the biggest construction companies in Finland. Has a revenue of about 700-800 million euros per year. And this project was a medium-sized industrial facility, an extension on an existing factory that makes silicon wafers. These wafers are used for microchip production. So you can imagine that spaces in the different MEP systems, they have a lot of requirements for the construction conditions. So the problem for this project was that since it has so much MEP and process installation, the models, the federated models, become very large. And for most site people to use Solibri, it became very, very slow to use. So that's the first problem, how to optimize the federated model. The second problem is that not all the information was there from the designers. For example, the process systems, because it was, I believe the design was outsourced overseas, it didn't contain any Finnish description for what the systems are. So for the contractor, it was impossible to say, what is this system? So with this automation, I also enriched the IFC models with this information from an external source, which is basically an Excel spreadsheet that I'm driving into the IFC model, and then I get it also into Solibri. And second added information is the construction phase. So this building was divided into 9 different sections, and that's a lot of different phases, and this information doesn't come from the designer's models. But with the automation, we can optimize the federated model so that it's much easier, much faster to use. Case 2 is something I use to automate my own work. So if case 1 is about running a really big project, maybe once a week, this is about creating a lot of different IFCs and Solibri models quickly, because the way Crane Optimizer works is that you have multiple locations. Here you can see the green and red columns there. We need to be able to create very efficiently different options for different locations and different crane models. So the model itself is very simple, but we want to create different IFCs very fast. So it's it's a little bit different than the case one. And I will show you later also the crane optimizer application, and it will explain the problem a bit better. And this is the bonus case that I built just for this webinar. A very simple web application that has the 3D window and a table of data and a small chart. And the idea is that even though we are working with desktop software, we can actually still get data from a web application with this automation and get it into Solibri in a very efficient way. So I will show you that as well. And in this case, this is the only case where I will actually run the script, because it does take a little bit of time. But with this example, it takes about 1 minute. So I will show you, and then you will see what the script actually does and how it's being executed. Okay, so before we move to results, I have a couple of diagrams. Here is the process of the whole system, how we make it work. And starting from top, this is the manual part of the work. So, well, depending on your common data environment or document management system, you could also automate the downloading of the IFC files to your device. But this is the manual step otherwise. So you collect all the IFC models, whatever information takeoff templates, rule sets, classifications you have, you save them to a specific folder, and that's the manual part of the whole automation. Next up is the simple BIM part. So we make sure that we have all the simple BIM scripts and templates for each discipline ready, also in a separate folder. In the next slide, I will show an example of the implementation of this folder structure. But now that we have these steps done, we have the Python file that basically looks at the previous files from the folders and runs the software for us instead of having to open simple BIM and Solibri manually. The Python script just does it all for us. Looks at each file and runs the scripts and templates and gives us the end results. And the end results is the federated SMC model. We can create information takeoff and issue spreadsheets. The BIM 360 example is an old one, but you could also merge multiple IFC files into one IFC file, a federated model that you could open in BIM 360. And you can also, because we're using Python, we can, as long as our device is connected to internet, we can also push data into cloud, data from Solibri, for example, information takeoff data into the cloud. And here's an example of the folder structure. And I can also show you the actual folder structure on my device, but it's quite simple. It has 2 or 3 levels. And let me just get the spotlight here. Oh, sorry. Spotlight here. So it starts from the main level here, project, and I use the folder name dynamically so that it goes into the file names as well. So naming this folder is what will also end up in the created SMC and modified IFCs. I have a folder for simple BIM content, the scripts and the templates, and original IFCs here. And then modified IFCs and SMC will be there, and different folders for the Solibri features. And the way it works is that, okay, I'm having some technical trouble here. Let me see. Okay, now it works. Yeah, so Each of these original IFCs is modified by the SimpleBIM script and template. After the SimpleBIM part is done, it creates the modified IFC. So we have consolidated and enriched the IFC data. For example, we have removed unnecessary attributes. We have input whatever additional data we want to add to the IFC. And we do this iteration for each of the disciplines. And for each of the disciplines, we have the SimpleBIM scripts, and then each SimpleBIM script will create an IFC model. And once we have the modified IFCs, we create the command for this XML file, and the XML file is the file that we use to launch Solibri with. This is the file that contains all the information for Autorun. So we create the commands for each of these files to open, or if the SMC already exists, we can update the models. Additionally, then for each of the folders, if we have information takeoff templates or rule sets that we want to run, we create the similar command for each of them. And once we have done this, we have the XML file ready. And then with a special command, we can execute Solibri with this Autorun file. And the end result is the combination model or federated model .smc, as well as if we have some Excel spreadsheets that we created, reports, they will also be then created by this script. Okay, now's the time to show the results. So there's a lot of information, I know, here. We can always go back to these diagrams in the Q&A section, but I will just show you the results for each case, what this actually does. So for case 1, I can show you on Solibri. Just let me know that if it's not moving smoothly. This is the original federated model. This is something that has everything. This hasn't been touched by SimpleBIM or Solibri Autorun. And the problem with this is exactly that it's a very heavy model. If we want to use the classifications, every time we click something, it takes a long time to think. I cannot show you the insides. I agreed that I will only show the exterior of the superstructure of the building, but we can already see here that there's a lot of overlapping, for example, between the structural model and the architectural model. And another problem that we have is that, especially for site use, if we look at the properties, we have a numerous number of different property sets here. And if the user wants to find any data here, relevant information, they have to really go through each of these, and it's very hard to remember where the data is. And the same applies to the structural model, even though it's a little bit better. And here you can also see it takes a long time when we are using the selection basket. It's the same problem here. There's a lot of values that really represent nothing. And as I said, I won't run the script. For this one, it takes quite a long time. It can take half an hour to run. But after we run the script, the end result is this. So you can see already that we don't have overlapping between structural and architectural models. This is something I've removed using SimpleBIM. And about data content, instead of having countless of property sets, there's just one consolidated property set with the relevant information. And the same works for the architectural model. If we look at just the office part of this factory, then so we can select a covering, for example, the same thing, same property set name, and only a few of the attributes that we need in this case. And if we needed more, we could add into the templates. And a really sort of useful feature that you don't, in a single project, you don't see it, but I know, for example, SRV does it for a lot of their projects, is that if you do this across all your projects in your organization, then all the content you build, classification rules, or whatever rules you have, you can use the same property set and the same property names every time. So you don't have to create separate rules or classifications depending on the authoring software, for example, whether it was modeled with Revit or ArchiCAD, it doesn't matter anymore. We have the same data content. Okay, I will be moving on to the case 2. And for this one, I will show the Crane Optimizer application. So this here you can see is a web app that I built. And here the user can, or my customer can sign in and see all the projects that the user has access to, and then select the project, and you end up in this view. So it's an interactive dashboard where you can see all the results. And the blue ones are the crane locations, potential crane locations. If I select here, I can visualize which is the best and worst location for a crane. And for each of these, you can select the location. If we take the best one, it will show you the capacity. This is like a generic crane that we use to compare different locations. I can also show which ones are the heaviest elements here. And I can also compare different locations like this, multiple locations, how they affect our crane capacity and boom length needs. So for this, what I used Solibri Autorun for is that since we have so many options, we have so many different locations, we have multiple crane models that we might want to show. And in this dashboard, I don't have the visualization for showing that if we select one location here, let me just move this windows, and we select one of the cranes, let's say that we are forced to use one of the levers. And what I can show here is which elements can be lifted and which ones cannot be lifted. So red ones are the ones that cannot be lifted, but it doesn't show the how much the element is over or under capacity. And this is what I use Solibri for. And Solibri Autorun and SimpleBeam also is used to export, or rather take the exported data here. You can download it. If I download the CSV, and I will just show you quickly, it's a very simple table. I have the unique ID for the element and the calculated values. And so I need to get this into the IFC model, and I need to do it efficiently because I might have to do a few dozen of these per project. So I created a script that all I need to do is take this CSV file, move it to a specific folder, run the script, and I end up with this model here in Solibri. So this actually should be the same location and the same crane model. So if we select, it has a classification here. So now you can see not just bright green and bright red, but a color scale, how much over and under we are capacity. So here, if we go to this property set here, you can see it's 3.7 kilotons over capacity. And this way, the structural engineer can also see where is there room to increase the weight and reduce the number of elements. So dark green means that we are way under capacity, so you could increase the size of these prefabs here. And this takes me only a couple minutes to get from the dashboard to Solibri. And that is case number 2. Let's move on to the last case. So the bonus case that was just built for this webinar. And for this very familiar looking interface, it's the same model even, and it's not a real app in itself. It basically emulates a web application where there's a table and some charts and some imaginary process data that we have here. So if we let's pretend that we are now in a web application and we have some information we want to add. Let's select the detailed, the objects that have a status here detailed. And we can add a couple of walls here. And then this is where we add data in a web app. It could be whatever web application we have. And let's just do a few taps here. And now, as we've done this, we've updated the data into a database, a live online database. And in this case, I will show you how it looks when we actually run the script. So I have the terminal ready here. All I need to do is run this command, Python autorun.py. So this is the main file that runs everything. It runs the connection to the database. It runs simplebim. It creates the XML file that is used for Solibri Autorun as well. So let's see what happens, and I hope this works. And it gives some information here connected to database. It queried the data for us from the database. Now it's opening simplebim, and soon you will see the simplebim window opening, hopefully. There we go. It's processing the model. It's importing the data. After this, it will run the template, save a new IFC, and then Solibri will be launching. And this should take total about 1 minute. At this point, we can check. So we had 10 objects with detailed and manufactured 8, delivered 4. Let's see if the results match. And here we have the same information. So detailed 10, manufactured was 8, and delivered is 4. So yes, it's the correct data for the correct objects. And this is something that came from a web application. In this case, I'm running it locally on my device for demo purposes, but it's essentially the same as running it online because we're using the Python script, so we can actually query data. As long as our device is connected to internet, we can query data and just run it like this and have it in Solibri in 1 minute. Okay. I hope it wasn't, I know it was a lot of information. I hope you got something useful out of this, at least inspiration, if nothing else. And I will leave this contact information. And yes, if you do want a template script and a template folder structure, then just drop me an email and I will send one for you.
Thank you so much, Joonas. This was very informative. Thank you for taking the time and effort to show us this. There was a lot of info.
My pleasure.
Today. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So to you, all of our viewers, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat or the question box below. We have, in the meantime, received some questions.
Okay.
So I think this is from one of our viewers, and I think it's 2 questions in one. So first, is it possible to get the used scripts as an example, Python and Autorun? And
yes.
What is recommended to update the IFCs? Is it creating a new CMS each update, or is it better to use the same CMS and just update it?
I prefer using the same SMC and updating the IFCs as they come. But this is, I think it depends on your use case. I would always update unless there's some special reason not to. Then we have the same SMC file every time. And then if we had some manual classifications or whatever manual work done in the SMC, then we shouldn't lose that.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And Michelle, we will send you the scripts then offline. Yeah. Okay, so another question was that, do you need to know Python in order to use the Autorun script?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, you don't. You can run the Autorun without Python. In that case, you will just manually create the XML file. You can find the instructions in the Solibri documentation. But I would say that Python is such a language. It's a very high-level language, which means that it's easy to read, it's easy to learn, and together with the modern AI language generators, I would say that it's not an overly difficult task to move to Python. It just makes it so much more dynamic, and you don't have to manually create so many things. But Autorun, no, you don't need Python. You can run it on the command line, or you can even create like a shortcut icon on your desktop and run it. But then you need to create the XML file manually.
Speaking about that, Joonas, so how much did you need to develop the app? That was one question.
In hours, or it's hard to say. I mean, first time I did it, of course, it took me probably a day. But now that I have things ready and I know how they work, it really doesn't take me long. It's a couple hours of work.
That's great, and it saves you a lot more hours. Yeah. Okay, another question from Sebastian is, great work. May I ask for the XML template that was mentioned earlier? Is it distributed via mail or GitHub page? The XML template.
Yeah, I can send the XML file along with the other things. I think I will
Okay.
I will make a zip package that I will send via email. I think that's the easiest. They're not very big.
Okay, then you will receive an automated email after this webinar that will get all the information that you need. And some people were asking about the presentation, so you will get that as well as the recording for the webinar. So no worries. Okay, just searching for some questions that we haven't answered. How do you enrich IFC models by entering information or leaving just important information from original IFCs?
Yeah, so this is SimpleBIM features. So SimpleBIM provides a way to restrict and enrich IFC data using Excel templates. That's SimpleBIM stuff, and we won't go into details in that. If you're interested, you can contact me about that as well, and we can have a separate discussion over the details on that, and I can forward that to the guys at SimpleBIM. It's a Finnish software, but it's based on Excel templates where you determine the content that you want to remove or enrich.
Okay. Additionally, okay, asking about the recording. Yes, we will share all of that. Okay, so are you, a question for Joonas is that, are you the only one doing this in your company? And sorry, are you the only one doing this procedure in your company, and how any projects are you using it on?
For now, yes, and I used it on the client project, the one that I showed, the case number 1. That's where I created it for, and it's a service I provide also, creating these scripts and updating the IFCs and SMCs for clients for a very competitive price since it's automated.
Thank you, Joonas. There are some questions that we're getting that is not in English. Can you please resend the question in English? And we have one that, is it necessary to have Solibri closed during Autorun?
It's a good question. I never tried by having Solibri on, but yeah, that's worth trying actually. I think it might work if you're updating the model. It should work. Yeah, updating the IFCs. There might be some of the tasks that won't run. But yeah, that's a good question. I don't have a full answer to that.
Okay, Peter, if you know the answer, please feel free to jump in. In the meantime, we can take another question, and we can research this also and send you the answer privately, Andreas. So don't worry. Another question is that I use .bat format to run the Autorun XMLs. Is that the best practice, or do you recommend, Joonas, something that is more user-friendly?
I think that's one of the 3 options. Yeah, using the batch file. I always run it from the terminal because that's what I work with so much. I would say this is a matter of preference, but if you want to extend your Autorun usage to include other features like working with other software on your desktop, like SimpleBIM or Excel work, then the Python script is the best option, because the Python interacts with your operating system, and it will run the batch file. It can also run the batch file for you. In my opinion, it's a matter of preference. The end result is the same.
Thank you, Joonas. Yes, I was able to translate one question is, are the simple BIM scripts freely available or do you have to buy the system?
You have to buy a license for the software to have access to the API functionalities. Yeah. Simple BIM also offers documentation for this automation. And for what I showed you today in the templates, I can include like a small example of simple BIM as well.
Thank you, Joonas. One question is regarding, do you use a dedicated task server or your own computer?
I use my own computer. You could set up a server and run it based on a schedule, like a specific time of day running this whole thing. Or even you could set up a server that monitors the database and knows when the data has been changed and then runs the script. But for me, for now, it's been enough to just run it from the terminal. But it can be done, yeah, setting up a server.
Okay. We hope this answered your question, Hannes. One is, can Python knowledge replace FE Simple BIM?
No. It's with Python, we are basically launching simple BIM with specific parameters and the templates, just like with the Solibri Autorun. Yeah, Python only launches the software for us. It interacts with the operating system.
Okay, so it has to be simple BIM.
I would say so, yeah. Unless you want to start writing something directly into the IFC models, but that's a huge application that you would have to build.
Okay. How can you launch Autorun? Until now I tried, but I couldn't. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's something I forgot to show actually, just how to run it in a terminal, very simple way. So I can do you still see my screen? I can show it quickly.
Yes.
The easiest way.
Yes,
Yeah. So if you go to if you're using Windows, then just I have the Finnish Windows, but find your command line terminal, and when you have it open, navigate to the program file Solibri, where you have the solibri.exe. So if I write this, and then if I click enter now, it will start Solibri just as if you started it from a desktop icon. But if you want to launch Autorun, press space, and now you give the path to the XML file that contains the instructions for Autorun. So it would be like XML. Let's pretend that this was the full path to the file. And now if I click enter, it will run the Solibri with the Autorun automation.
Okay. So we hope this answered your question. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of requests for the script and everything. So we will send you everything in an automated email to everyone. So don't worry about that. And I already have your email, so because you registered for this webinar, so don't worry. We will send you everything at the end of the webinar. Remy is mentioning that they have experienced mixed results with auto reporting results to a presentation. Sometimes tens of slides will be generated from a single rule. What way can I limit this? I have already used auto comment zoom okay, I can, this cannot be really explained. I'm sharing this with you, Joonas.
Sure.
So maybe you can share.
I might not have the answer to that. That sounds like perhaps a bug that Solibri might have to handle.
Okay, so Peter and I are taking notes about this.
Yeah.
Thank you for the feedback.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry? Yeah.
Yeah. I have tried to say something here sometimes, but yeah. So if there's some like issues with the Autorun that it doesn't run as it should, then you should contact support solibri.com. So that's the email address. So yeah, if any of those kind of issues, then please contact our support.
And also we have somebody asking if they can learn more about Solibri products. So where can they do that? You can go to our help center. It has all the tutorials to learn about this. I will share it in a general message in chat. Also, we encourage you to join our Solibri society, because there is a society of very engaged people. So you get your answer there. You can talk to peers that might be facing the same issues that you are, and interested about the same subjects that you are. So please join Solibri Society, and I will put the links here in the chat. I'm seeing here some suggestions for the UI. Yes. Also, is it possible to access the estimations in Solibri over Autorun or Python? I'm interested in the documentation and the Python scripts as well. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Dennis. So, is it possible to access the estimations in Solibri over Autorun or Python?
If the estimations means like information takeoff tables, there's a task that you can use to export the report. And once you have it in Excel, you can use Python to interact with the Excel and do almost whatever with that. You can send it to cloud, or you can use that to return it to a simple BIM template or whatever, as long as you get it out of Solibri in Excel. If that answers the question.
Yes, thank you, Joonas. Why not forcing the partners MEP to deliver clean IFCs with only the needed property sets and infos? Restoring, restructuring, and saving data.
As a consultant, I cannot affect that, but yeah, it's a very good question, and this is an eternal struggle that we have, at least here in Finland, with the designers. Mostly they don't have the capabilities to do this, but that would be the best option. Essentially, when we do this kind of thing, is a workaround. Yeah, but that's a good point.
Yes. Okay. Why you use Simple BIM in particular?
It's just a familiar tool for me, and I really like it for IFC modification. There might be some other options, but for me it's a good tool, and I have direct contact with the guys at Simple BIM, so that also helps. And I've used it for a very long time because it's a Finnish software, so obviously in Finland we use it a lot.
We're getting a lot of positive comments, Joonas. Thank you all for the good feedback.
Thank you.
We're glad you liked it. Joonas has been working so hard on it, so thank you. Is it possible to check only a selection of rule sets? As I recognized, all rule sets in a project are checked, nevertheless, if they are activated or not. That takes sometimes a lot of time.
I think this might be a Solibri feature in a wider feature, not just Autorun, I think. Maybe Peter can answer.
Yeah, sorry, can you repeat the question?
So is it possible to check only a selection of rule sets? Because all rule sets are being checked in a project, nevertheless, if they're activated or not, and it takes some time.
So if those are not activated, then it's not checked. But did I understand correct that in this case, Solibri still checks those rules if they're not activated? And
If Autorun does that, then it's an Autorun feature that might.
Yeah, then it's Autorun. Yeah, and Autorun, with Autorun, you specify what rules you are checking. So how to say? It's hard to say here what could be the possible issue here. Again, please contact support at solibri.com.
Yeah. You can send me your question, Michelle, and I will try to transfer it to our support, or contact support directly if you have their info. Joonas, a question for you: if you have experience with transferring data from IFC models to Revit models?
A bit, yeah. At the previous employer where I was working as a development engineer and BIM manager, we used Revit mainly for architectural modeling, and in some cases we had to import IFC to Revit. But not something that I would have such in-depth knowledge, but some, yes.
Okay, yeah. We are running out of time, unfortunately. We still have a lot of comments and some questions. So if we haven't answered these questions, or we haven't answered your question, then please wait for us. We will be answering it on our website, or also we could send you the answer directly to your email. So don't worry. Thank you so much, Joonas, for this amazing presentation.
My pleasure.
We really appreciate it. And it was very informative to our audience. So I wanted to mention briefly that we have another customer insight webinar with Simon, and it will happen on the 1st of November. So please save the date. It seems that the email that you will receive after the webinar will have so many links, and this will be one of them. And thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me or Peter, and we will answer you. So it's great having you here. See you next on November 1st. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.